Macoraba. Macoraba is an interesting word. It has a long history. It's been this claim that Macoraba is the earliest reference to Mecca. Let's examine the history of that claim and the accuracy of that claim. There are two parts to it, the where and the what. Let's have a look at the where. Macoraba is recorded in the geography of Ptolemy as 73 degrees, 20 minutes, 22 seconds. Not exactly the most accurate of locations, but let's see. Macoraba, according to Ptolemy, it is a city in northwestern Arabia Felix. Note, Arabia Deserta is southern Syria to the northern Hijaz. Arabia Felix is the southern part of Arabian Peninsula, which includes incense-producing Yemen, Oman, southern Saudi Arabia, including Najran. Let's have a look at those locations. So this here would be Arabia Deserta, right? This Syria region and this northern Arabia. Then you've got Arabia Felix, Happy Arabia, and southwestern would be down here, oddly enough, and that's important. This is Yemen, this is Oman. This is where we mentioned the Fihrist early on, and these are the Sabaeans, and these are the ones that Muslims seem to have copied their religion from, according to that book, because the practices are identical to these pagan moon-worshipping Sabaeans. Let's continue. Claudius Ptolemy's 2nd century geography places the name Macoraba in the west of the Arabian Peninsula. With the lack of historical evidence for Mecca, apologists claim that Macoraba is Mecca. Ptolemaeus Claudius, known as Ptolemy, lived from 90 to 168 AD. He was a Greek writer who wrote the Guide to Drawing the Earth. You'll find other names for his book, which listed latitude and longitude for cities, mountains, and other geographical features known in his day. Now, to learn more about the specifics of measuring and converting this coordinate system of the maps into modern maps, see Dan Gibson, The Location of Mecca in Ptolemy's Geography, and I would also highly recommend getting hold of Indy Morris's Mecca and Macoraba. This paper is fantastic. There's some great information there, so I recommend get both of these. Let's have a look at this paper by Ian Morris. A myriad of sources included, of course, Ptolemy. In a chapter arguing that Cush was the ancestor of the Saracens, Bochart, let's have a look, that Cush was the ancestor of the Saracens. Cush would be up here, below Egypt, but above Ethiopia. So apparently this was Cush. So, interesting point. He correctly identified the location of the Hejaz, and he named some of the towns in the Hejaz, including Mecca. And he wrote, which in Ptolemy is Macoraba, Mecca Rabba, or Great Mecca. This is the first recorded instance where Macoraba has been identified with Mecca. Now, apologists want to claim that since the 2nd century, Ptolemy knew that Mecca and Macoraba were the same. He just happened to call it Macoraba. Well, this claim does not date to the 2nd century. It is not on Ptolemy's map. Ptolemy had a different context for the word. So let's continue. While first identification of Macoraba at Mecca is traced to Samuel Bochart in his book Sacred Geography in 1646, that's the middle of the 17th century, not the 2nd century, no satisfactory derivation has been proposed to explain the difference between the two names, Macoraba and Mecca. Now, oddly enough, I've mentioned that the god of the Sabaeans was Al-Makka, and of course Mecca is also known as Al-Makka. Interestingly enough, same name as the Sabaean moon god, but hey, who am I to comment on this crazy coincidence? Now, the word is based on the southern Semitic group Makarab. Let me go back. This idea of Makarab or Great Mecca, if you read through the papers on the subject, this has been rejected on linguistic grounds alone. Right? The idea of Mekaraba, Great Mecca, right? This has been rejected on linguistic grounds alone. There are many other reasons that people reject that. Now, the word Makarab is based on the southern Semitic group Muqarrib. Muqarrib is very much a Yemeni term. It effectively, the Muqarrib is singular, and then you have the Muqarraba or the Muqarriba, plural. These are warrior priest kings, a line of warrior priest kings. The modern Arabic term for that became the Abd al-Malik, which replaced the term Muqarraba. So as Islam rose, they chose a new term, Abd al-Malik. We would know that today as a caliph. Abd al-Malik is the slave of the Malik, the slave of the king. The king not being an earthly king, the king being the main deity, the primary deity of the pantheon. You're a slave of that deity. Just like Muhammad is a slave of Allah, Muhammadism is an Abd al-Malik. Right? He is a slave of, so it's a title. Now, of course, when I say Caesar, You might think of Julius Caesar, but there were 12 Caesars. Caesar is a title, it is not a name. Of course, Julius Caesar may have become associated with that, and of course, a particular Abd al-Malik from I think 695 to 715 had become associated with the term Abd al-Malik. He was not the only one, right? Remember, it is a title. So it derives originally from the Muqarrab, and they were known as the Muqarrabun, the Muqarraba. But the term Muqarrab means temple, sanctuary, but also altar. It has a holy connotation, and this is the context within which we have Claudius Ptolemaeus saying the Macoraba, that this was the temple, the main sanctuary, this altar. Bochart used the root MKTRBH, Muqatraba, for Great Mecca. However, this is entirely incorrect for the Arabic language. Interesting little aside here, in this Brill book by Federico Corriente, Dictionary of Arabic and Allied Loanwords, apparently an abridgment of the Saracen Muqarrab. So the Saracens inherited this term from the Yemenis, right? This warrior, priest, king. It means sanctuary, and it's taken from the Gez Miqrab. So the term Miqrab does not originate with Islam. It goes back to the Gez, right? The Ethiopic, to judge from the Latin form Macoraba. So Macoraba is Muqarrab, is Miqrab, right? So this is originally a term that is associated with the Yemenis, associated with this Sabaean moon worship cult. So understand there are interesting parallels here. So the Macoraba is a reference to these Yemenis, and it's a reference to this particular religion where they worshipped Al-Makkah. And their main temple is, of course, in Yemen. We've shown you several of their temples, but there is a location which is completely wiped out, basically turned to dust, which was their main location. Let's have a look. So the Macoraba, Qarb, right? Muqarrab, right? To Al-Mahabisha, Yemen. Adjusting Ptolemy's coordinates will correctly place the towns and rivers in southern Arabia on a modern map. However, the towns previously cited as the locations of Makkah are all discovered to be located elsewhere. Now, when we just overlay Ptolemy's original locations on a modern map, you get this mess here with lots of places in the ocean. So clearly this cannot be accurate. So the coordinates have to be adjusted. Now, Mecca and Macoraba are marked in red. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy. However, once you translate the coordinates correctly, you find a completely different location. But a few interesting points first. There are no Meccan archaeological artifacts until the 8th century AD. The first mention of Mecca is in the Byzantine Arab Chronicle in 741 AD, placing it in Mesopotamia. That's around this region, interestingly. The first time Mecca is listed on a map of the Middle East is AD 900, not the 2nd century. Mecca is the mother of all cities in Quran 692 and 42:7, but it did not exist in the early 7th century. There's no evidence of that. If it did exist, it was a tiny hamlet, forgettable. Macoraba, we discover, is located 720 kilometers south of Mecca. So this is Mecca here. It is down here. Let's have a look. This is Al-Mahabisha today. This is the location of Al-Mahabisha on a map. This is Mecca up here. 720 kilometers separate them. Green, lush, mountainous. It also happens to fit the Quranic descriptions of Mecca. Just like Petra has been made a possible site for the original Mecca, this location in Yemen also meets those criteria. Bear that in mind. Let's have a look at some additional pictures of Al-Mahabisha. These are some photographs of Al-Mahabisha. It's green, it's lush. It is a great growing area by all accounts. As you can see here, it is very green. It is mountainous, and look at all of these terraced farmlands. So this is an interesting area. And as I said, it seems to conform to what people describe of Mecca. It meets the same criteria as Petra does. All right, so I will pause here now. That's enough. I'll make an edit, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. I hope this was interesting. See you soon. Thanks.